Hey there, banditos. Welcome to the latest Friday episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits on this All Joe week. I'm Joe Marcello. And as always, we fling open the doors of a local comic shop, bringing interviews of favorite comic creators of yesterday and today. However, today, we're not bringing you an interview with a comic book creator. I'm bringing you an interview with someone from our childhood. None other than Lino himself, Larry Kenney. Off the bat, I need to thank Oren for putting this together for me. This was an absolute dream come true. If you have been listening to Dollar Bin Bandits over the years, you'll know that I have the utmost respect and adoration for voiceover actors, as well as just the love for the programming that we watched as a kid. And to be able to talk to the man who was the voice of one of the characters from our childhood was an absolute dream come true. And if you're watching the video on YouTube, or if you're not, encourage you to go check it out just to see what this guy looks like. Because, you don't put those two together. You will see the moment when he does the Lino voice and just tears well up in my eyes. It was absolutely fantastic. But look, I'm gushing. I'm fanboying out way too much. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. This is Larry Kenney, because I have the honor and privilege of talking to none other than Larry Kenney, the voice of our childhood. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Joe. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Hey. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And, we kind of start off with every guest asking them the same way, and that is how you first discovered comic books. Or comics in general, I should say.
Well, comics in general. I was always a big fan of comic strips in the newspaper. Now, young people today don't even know what I'm talking about. Probably, I don't think that any newspapers had comic strips for a long time. But back in my day, and I was born in 1947, so every day, you get the newspaper and go right to the comic section, and there would be a whole page, sometimes 2 pages of, and on Sundays they were in color. So anyway, that's why my first introduction to comics. And in terms of comic books, I never was really a collector of comic books. Boy, I wish now I had been. Who knew, right?
Yeah, now's the time.
And now's the time. It's just like I wish I'd kept all the ThunderCats paraphernalia that I had, back when we were doing the show and everything. But again, who knew that they were going to be worth a lot of money, But I remember going to friends' houses and hanging out, and they'd have comic books, and I'd sit and read them and enjoy them. But I never really, collected them myself or bought a lot of them myself. I'm sorry.
So, no, that's fine. I mean, we always ask that question, and it's always interesting to find out how people discovered them. Whether it's through, a family friend or a neighbor or just in the store, and they get to a point, and for whatever reason, they part ways with them, and then later down the road, they want to get them back for, out of nostalgia or necessity or, investment.
It's like baseball cards,
Exactly.
I never was a big collector of baseball cards, but I had, many. The players I liked and all that stuff wasn't
right.
Back again. I wasn't collecting them because this one's going to be worth some money or whatever as today is the case. But just like baseball cards, I saved some, I know, but all these years later, when I went back to my mom's house and asked where my baseball cards were, I got the answer most guys get. Well, honey, I threw those out.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't think you'd want those, and you're like, Mom.
I'm gonna go over
here. Like everybody's mom.
Exactly.
Or something. So I don't have a collection, but my son Tanner has an enormous collection of baseball cards and baseball memorabilia and things like that, and he trades online, and does very well at it.
Yeah, that's the the best way to do that nowadays, I've discovered, is just trading online, going to, conventions and meeting others. And,
Yeah, sure.
So, like I said, when we started, you were the voice of my childhood and, everyone of my generation. And it is just, I can't put in words what your voice is iconic, but you didn't just do ThunderCats, which we will certainly get to. How did you get into voiceover work?
Well, it goes all the way back to my first job in radio. And that's eventually how I got into voice work is doing radio. I started when I was 15 years old at a station in Peoria, Illinois. I'm from that area. And my mother tells me, or used to tell me, she's passed now, but she would tell me that from the time I could talk, I was mimicking what I heard on radio and television. And I would watch cartoons, of course, and then do my little version of what they sounded like and things like that. And I kept doing that when I got into school. And I quickly learned that it was a good way to make people laugh, if you're doing voices and things. And I quickly learned, especially that girls love a guy who can make them laugh. It's true. It's true. When you're a teenager, you try to find a way that, get some attention from the ladies. And so I kept doing the voices and funny jokes and things like that. In fact, speaking of going back to my mother's house, I went back and she had kept all my report cards. Back then we got report cards,
Right.
Actual physical little card.
Right.
Each teacher would write your grade on it and then a little comment. Well, as I went through them all, and she kept every one of them through 12th grade, there was always a comment along the lines of, Larry's a good student. Larry's very smart and a bright student, and he's eager. But he would do so much better if he just stopped making jokes and doing little voices, impressions in class. And I look back on that now and I go, I win.
I gotta say, you give me goosebumps when you're saying that stuff, because that's exactly the type of person I was.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, and it was
class clown.
It was my way of just coping with anything,
Sure.
Just getting a rise out of people, making them laugh. Didn't ever try to make anyone look silly or stupid, but crack a joke. And I could certainly agree with, getting to know girls, making them laugh. So
there you go.
Definitely works.
To continue on to the answer to your question. So then when I was 15 years old, I got a job at the local radio station in Peoria. They played top 40 music, things like that. I was a disc jockey. And I continued doing the voices. In fact, I used them on the air. I would play a Beatles song or something, and then come out of it and do a little character voice or an impression of somebody, and I kept doing that all through my radio career. I went from Peoria, Illinois to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to Cleveland, Chicago, and then finally New York, exactly 50 years ago next month.
Wow.
And then when I got to New York, I had an agent at that time. You pretty much had to have an agent to handle your affairs. And he started getting calls of people, advertising people, who had heard me on the air doing things. And they started calling him to have me come to auditions for things that when they wanted character voices, And so that's really how I got into the professionally being a professional voice actor. Although I guess you could call a disc jockey a voice actor, but he's more of a voice personality. So it served me well. I started getting jobs doing commercials, lots of commercials. I was the voice of Count Chocula for 40 years and the voice of Sonny the Cuckoo Bird for 40 years. Yahoo! I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Oh boy! Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And of course, Count Chocula. It's frightfully delicious, And but I did lots of other stuff. You mentioned I appreciate you saying I was the voice of your childhood. I hear that a lot because back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, I guess you couldn't get away from my voice on TV. I was on cartoons and ThunderCats, SilverHawks, TigerSharks, and all those. And the commercials, I did lots of commercials, not with character voices, just with my own voice, because I was blessed with a pretty good quote announcer voice too. So yeah, I did a lot of stuff back then. A lot of toy commercials, Milton Bradley and
Oh yeah.
Rock'em Sock'em Robots and stuff like that. I've done thousands and thousands of commercials. I'm still working, although I'm kind of, I don't like to say semi-retired because I'm never going to actually retire. I tell people who ask me if I'm going to retire, I say, well, I'm going to keep talking. I might as well get paid for it. Plus, I love doing it. I love doing it. So I still do some commercials. I still do Skittles, the Skittles commercials. I've been doing
Absolutely.
those for almost 25 years. Where the guy at the end of the commercial says, "Feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow." That's me.
Oh
Didn't know.
man.
In this business of voiceover, radio, and entertainment, unfortunately, some people get a little success and they change. They think they're better than everybody else, or you know what I mean. Varying
Yep.
degree. 99% of the people in my business are nice people, but there are, well, in any business there are people. If you assholes,
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
don't care if you're a banker or a salesman or something.
No, for sure.
But yeah, I've always enjoyed talking to people about my work, and now, of course, with Comic Cons, uh, it's a wonderful way to meet the fans and answer any questions they have, so and do these things.
That's amazing. So you get into radio and you were blessed with an amazing voice and you decide to
Thank you.
and how did you get involved with doing animation work?
Well, my first animation work was it Count Chocula or Sonny? I think it was. I started doing Count Chocula first in '78, I think it was, and then a year later, I took over the role of Sonny on the Cocoa Puffs commercials. So that was my first animation, really, because those were animated commercials, obviously. But in terms of what we think of as animation, like shows, animated series, cartoons, it wasn't until '83, I guess, that I got a call to show up at the studio and audition. I had to audition for everything. Audition for a new animated series that was going to be done in New York, which was unheard of back then. Back then, everything was done in California, Disney, Warner Brothers, all those old cartoons, So I get to the audition. Everybody's talking about, I can't believe they're finally doing an animated show here, But so I went there, and let me make sure I'm answering the right question. I tend to ramble, and sometimes in the middle of something, I'll kind of veer off to something else,
Oh, totally fine.
Well, I blame it on being 112 years old. But actually,
they'll have a great head of hair, so I wouldn't worry about it. I'm jealous.
I bought this last week. So once again, I'm going to have to ask you, exactly was the question?
Just how you ended up getting into animation. Eventually,
Okay.
All the amazing shows that you'd worked on.
Exactly the same as I got into doing commercials. You get a call from your agent one day, and he says, "Okay, now tomorrow at 10, I want you to show up at this particular place and time, and you go there. They give you a script, tell you what the show's about, things like that. When it's your turn, you go into this little booth, and give them your idea of what these characters sound like." So I remember getting there that day for ThunderCats, and I was actually pretty nervous. I mean, I had been in the business for, it was '83. I'd been in business since '63, so 20 years, but I had never done an animated series. So you go in, and I remember they asked me this. They being Rankin Bass, the company Rankin Bass, production company Rankin Bass, whose work I used to watch when I was a kid. They did, I don't know if you guys remember this, but they did
all those Christmas movies.
Yes, they did Rudolph Red-Nosed Reindeer with Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
They did Frosty the Snowman with Burl Ives. And I grew up on those. So when I got a call from my agent, saying, go here and do that and do that. And it's being done by Rankin Bass. I said, really? Wow. Imagine if I got a chance to be on a Rankin Bass cartoon. That would be really great. And I ended up doing 5 or 6 of them for them over a 3 or 4 year period. It was fantastic. Yeah.
So when they present to you, you're going to be doing the voice of a basically a human cat hybrid type character.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you're, when you want to, what you think this should sound like? Because I remember listening to an interview with Peter Cullen, and he was kind of telling a story how he got the Optimus Prime voice, and it's basically he decided it was his brother that inspired him for that voice.
Really?
And if you're gonna, basically his brother came back from who was a vet, and basically said, if you're gonna do a hero, a leader and a hero, present him in this certain way. So do you approach characters in a way like that, or I don't? I always find how the sausage is made type story version.
Well, first of all, Peter Cullen's one of my heroes. He's been doing animated stuff long before I have. I'm pretty sure. Optimus Prime. Right? Yeah, of course it is. Well, going back to when I got to the audition, they had the walls were lined with illustrations of the characters and things like the cat's lair, ThunderCats lair, and different. And then there was a synopsis of what the show is about, because it's a brand new show and nobody who knew what it was about. So they first got to let you know what this is all about, and then it was time for me to go in the booth, and they told us each, when you go in, we want you to pick a ThunderCat, one ThunderCat, out of the 5, and one mutant, bad guy, Mum-Ra's guy. And so I picked. I said, well, I'll audition for Lion, because he's the Lord of the ThunderCats. Who doesn't want to be the boss, the star,
of course.
And for Lion-O, if you think about it, well, first of all, they told us when you're doing the ThunderCat, no cartoon voices. We don't want a cartoony voice. They are, after all, half human, but come up with something, that sounds like what you see on the wall here, what he looks like, and he's a superhero and all that. So I just pretty much used my own voice. Although when I'm talking to you here in my real voice, it sounds like sword of omens, come to my hand, give me sight beyond sight. On screen, it comes out, sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight. A little more dramatic, but still sounds like a human being talking.
Right.
So that's what I did for that. And then when I auditioned for Jackal Man, the mutant, I kind of channeled in my mind a character from one of my favorite animated shows when I was a kid, Rocky and Bullwinkle. You familiar with Rocky?
Absolutely.
Snidely Whiplash, you remember him?
Yeah.
He was the ultimate villain. Wore a big black stovepipe hat, black cape, had a mustache like this, He's twirling it. He'd say like,
I'm going to get you, Nell, and tie you to the railroad track.
So, and the character was a jackal. So I'm thinking, what is it? What is a jackal? Not what does he sound like, but what is a jackal known for? They're wily and sneaky, like a hyena. They're just So I kind of combined those two, and it came out.
We must get the ThunderCats, yes.
That's how Jackal Man came out.
Were those? So I know I have some familiarity with how things are recorded nowadays, but were you all together in a studio playing off one another when you were recording?
Always. Okay. Always. Yeah, there were 5 of us. Sometimes they would add if there was a new character that came in for a couple of episodes. But there were 5 of us in the cast, and we did 130 episodes.
Wow!
And every one of those voices you hear on those episodes are one of us 5, which means over the course of, well, it took us 2 years to record all And I'll explain why later if you want me to. But so you'd end up doing tons of voices, and you had to, each had to be different from the other ones, so it got to be a little dicey sometimes.
Well, yeah, that's one thing I would love to know is how you would, some people, like, they kind of need to ramp up into a voice, or others can just kind of jump into it. And if you're reading Lion-O and you got to jump to, I mean, I don't remember, there are many scenes of, like, if Lion-O and Jackalman are in the same,
yes.
But how do you manage that? That must be just
there were a couple of ways of doing it. Some of the others would do all of one voice first. In other words, if there was a a dialogue between Mum-Ra and somebody else that Earl Hammond was doing the voice of, Earl Hammond was Mum-Ra. He would say, "I'm going to do all the Mum-Ra first."
Okay.
All the lines are on this page and the next page. And then we'll go back and record the other character's lines. I preferred to do it in what I call real time. If Lion-O was, with arguing with Jackalman or something, I would do it what I call real time. In other words, "What are you doing here, Jackalman?"
"You know what I'm doing here, Lion-O. We're after Chitara, but you're not going to get her." "Yes, we are."
I found it more satisfying to do it that way. It's not easy to do, but I found it more satisfying that way, and save time, not only for me, but for the editors, for everybody else. But basically because I felt good doing it that way.
Okay.
I mean, there were times when for whatever reason, something the dialogue said or the action was going on, I would say, "Let me just do these few Lion-O lines and then do Jackalman." But most of the time, yeah. And yes, we were all together in the studio back then.
Yeah.
Today, they record one person at a time. For example, I'm working now on Teen Titans Go.
Yeah.
You know that show?
Yeah, I do.
I
I watch a lot of television. I mean, like, ever since I was a child, and when I was a kid, I never had cable. We only had like 5 channels, and I watched everything. I mean, I learned about, Planet of the Apes from my dad. I was watching just way more stuff than I probably should have as a child. So, yeah, like when people make reference to things, I mean, I'm 45, but like like there's a lot of stuff I know. So, they're like, "How do you know about that?" I'm like, TV was my friend.
Good. Well, I meet a lot of people at Comic Cons now who come to my table, and not only there, but I get emails from people, and even before the internet, ever since 1985 or 6, when the show went on in 85, I believe. People would tell me in varying degrees of detail that they didn't have a very good childhood. And they would tell me, and they still do, but when I went into my room, when ThunderCats was on, closed the door, all that went away. You know what I'm talking about when I say all that. They were abused, they were neglected, or something like that. And that's the main reason why I'm so proud of our work on that show, and protective of it, of the legacy. I've had hundreds of offers to do Lion-O as a drunk or this and that. I won't do it. I once got a call from an agent. He said, "Seth MacFarlane just called. He wants to use you on a Family Guy." I said, "Fantastic. I want you to do it. They're doing a segment with Lion-O, and he wants you to play Lion-O." I said, "All right, okay." So I told my family, and they went, "Oh yeah, Dad." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I want to do it though." "Why?" My son said, "Dad, the big stars are asking to be on Family Guy." I said, "Look, I know I've watched it. It's a brilliant show. It really was. It really is. It's still on. Like Seth MacFarlane's a genius." But I said, "See, it's a little modern. It's so modern that they do things and get away with things on commercials, on the cartoon shows and everything else now that were considered filthy back then.
Right. There's a lot of edge to Family Guy.
Yeah, sure. And I think it was great, but I said I don't want to do Lion that way because I don't want the fans, my fans from ThunderCats, to hear Lion-O sing whatever, F you or anything like that. My son says, Dad, those kids, they're 32 now. And they'll love it. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll have them send me the script, which I did. And I read it, and I said, no way am I doing it. Tanner said, Dad, come on. I promise you that it's not going to be negative to your fans. I said, okay, but if I do this, it goes on the air, and I start getting email or, from former fans who are pissed off about, see, I just did it. Who are pissed off about, and of course I never did, not one. Everybody loved it. I don't know if you recall the scene where Peter Griffin, Family Guy, and Quagmire, I think, are for some reason in a car driving through San Francisco. And Peter says, wow, I bet you find a lot of strange couples living together here, right? They cut to an apartment where Lion-O is standing in the living room, just kind of, thinking. And Chitara comes walking in and she says, what's up, Lion-O? He says, I don't know, Chitara, but something tells me that Mum-Ra is up to no good. And she says, I'm going to the can. She goes to the bathroom. Upon which Lion-O takes the sword of omens, points it toward the bathroom door, and says, give me sight. Yeah. At that moment, Snarf walks in. Says,
what's you doing, Lion-O?
I said, oh, you want to get stoned?
I do. I remember it.
But I was so afraid it was going to cause trouble, but it didn't. Times change.
Oh, 100%. And I remember watching that episode, and my daughter, who was much younger at the time, who's now older, and where I was like, oh, you're gonna really get a kick out of this. And she was like, who is that? I'm like, oh, come on. And I would walk around the house, I'm like, that's Lion-O from the ThunderCats. And, she didn't get it. And then, trying to explain. So I'm walking around the house going, thunder. She's like, what? What is that about? I don't get it. Yeah. All right, never mind. But that was a pretty I think that's what makes that show so much fun, is that they just make reference to all these other moments in TV history and characters and all that sort of thing, and really just flip it, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. Family Guy had done episodes in the past with Lion-O very briefly. And Seth did the voices. I saw it. I said, that's Seth MacFarlane, pretty good Lion-O. So when my agent called and said, Seth wants you to do it, I thought, why don't you just do it? I didn't ask for that, but I'll do it, grudgingly. So now people think that I was the voice of Lion-O on all those other episodes, but no, I wasn't. At least I didn't get paid for it.
Yeah, I have a little talk with him. Look, he's got money to spare, so he could.
Hey, do you know the story about Seth MacFarlane on 9/11?
No.
This is true. I've talked to him about it, and everybody in the business knows it. Seth had a ticket to be on one of those flights that crashed into the World Trade Center.
Oh.
He got stuck in traffic and didn't make it. Coming out of Boston.
Wow.
2 of those planes came from Boston.
Right.
Yep. An airport. Got stuck in traffic and missed the flight. Now, can you imagine if that had happened to you, you would be haunted by that to today. I would.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God. Why not
Absolutely.
me? You know, and some poor bastard sat in that seat that I would be sitting in.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
He had a rough time dealing with that for a while.
oh, I certainly would.
I know he doesn't mind me talking about it because he talks about it sometimes. Wild, huh?
That is wild. You know, where we live in New York, we were able to, you know, we're in the suburbs and we were able to see all that occur from where we live. So it was certainly hits home.
Yeah.
So, you know, in addition to ThunderCats, you did SilverHawks, which the joke amongst me and my friends was ThunderCats in space. However, but it was still cool. I mean, we loved it, and the toys were amazing. And was that done at the same time as ThunderCats, or after the fact?
No, when we were about to finish up ThunderCats, pardon me. I'm sorry.
No,
if I were using this other mic, I told you I could mute it, you know, but I don't have a mute, I don't think. We did 130 episodes of ThunderCats over a 2-year period. And if you want, I'll explain later why it took so long to do. So we did ThunderCats, and we had about 5 episodes to go, I think, when they announced to us at one, Rankin Bass says, guys, as soon as we finish ThunderCats, we're going to start a new series. We've got the first 13 episodes written, so we'll start. As a matter of fact, as I recall, we actually did the first, recorded the voices for the first SilverHawks episode when we still had a couple ThunderCats to go. So, it was just like bang, 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 bang. And then when SilverHawks was over, we did a show called TigerSharks.
Yes.
Not that great. It was only a 15-minute thing. It was a part of a thing we did for Rankin Bass on ABC on Saturday mornings called Comic Strip.
Yep.
It was TigerSharks. It was Karate Cats, Mini Monsters, and something else. But yeah. So your question was, did you do it at the same time? So for about 3 weeks, we were doing both of them. Yeah.
So, you know, you mentioned it a couple of times, the lengthy process of making making those shows.
Yeah.
Was that because of just the animation? You know, it was traditional 2D animation, and you know, this is before computers.
Yeah.
And as I recall, it was animated in Japan.
Yes.
And then the recorded here, and then the two were married.
Yeah.
Wherever.
Although, if I may, you had that backwards.
Okay.
Recorded, the voices were recorded, and then you animate. Right. That's you know, because if you think about it, if it was the other way around, where they'd animate it and then we'd get in the studio and try to watch it and match it up with the
right.
Yeah, impossible to do.
Right.
So yeah, when we first started ThunderCats, we were scheduled for 13 episodes. That's typical in television, whether it's a cartoon show or a sitcom or whatever. At least it was back then, because you got this company is Rankin Bass. They own it. They're going to have to sell it to a network. Network is not just going to look at the script and say, yeah, I know, but why 130 of them? So you record 13. That's the standard in Hollywood, in television land.
Right.
13 weeks, 13 episodes. And then if the ratings are good, then they'll buy another 13 weeks. So you record 13 weeks. We've got scripts for they pre-write 13 scripts for the show before we ever start recording. We record those, and about halfway through that, maybe 8 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever, into the network checks the ratings, decides should we go. If they want more, then they tell the Rankin Bass, we'll take 13 more. But in the case of ThunderCats, they said, we'll take a year's worth. It's going to be a hit. We know it's going to be a hit. But that's the way you do it. Now today, I'm also on a show. I'm on a new show called Pokemon Horizons. I don't know if you heard of it.
I have. My son is
Yeah.
bananas
It's on
for it.
Netflix now.
Yeah.
I think a few episodes have been on already. We've already recorded 45. Now that show was on in Japan for 3 years. We're using the same animation and overdubbing it into English.
Wow.
So it's a total turnaround. You know?
What is that process like? Because
It's called ADR.
okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no. I trying to. I mean, you know, they're going to translate as best they can from from Japanese to English, and then try to time that dialogue to that the movement of their mouth. How difficult or easy is that for you to do?
It's not that difficult. I would thought it was going to be when I first found out. It's called ADR in the business. I'm not really sure what that means. Something recording, I'm sure. It's called ADR. And what happens is I'm in a booth, monitor in front of me, and we'll go to the portion they want to record, or my lines are. And they have the Japanese still on the thing. You know, they'll play that for me first, so I can get an idea of what the emotion should be with it. And of course, in Japanese, it's always pretty.
Very over the top.
Hope I didn't just say anything dirty in Japanese. I don't think I did. So while I'm watching that, the animation, across the bottom of the screen on the monitor, what's being said comes, I don't know why I'm doing this, but comes across the bottom of the screen. It's a crawl, you know? And when my line is coming up, there's a tone on the tape, and it goes beep, 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 and that's when you start talking. My lines are on that crawl on the bottom, and it always seems to match up perfectly. Of course, the engineer can adjust it too. A lot of times while you're recording, in fact, he'll say, the director will say, "That's great, Larry. Let me, Carl, can you move that a little bit to the right? You know." And then you got it. But it's not as difficult as I thought it would be. It's kind of neat, actually. ADR.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I do the video editing for our podcast too. So, trying to mess with the audio as best I can. Sometimes I find all that very interesting and how that happens.
Sure. And of course, you're doing it digitally. Imagine back in the day, when we were doing TCATs and all that stuff, they're working with tape.
Yeah.
They're working with tape. So if they're going to edit something, they had to take their razor.
And then literally cut
it to the next part, and then tape it together. That's exactly how it happened. You'd splice it. It's called splicing.
Yeah.
Splice it together. And the part that they took out, they would put over their shoulder or somewhere on the desk. And they would play that for the director. And the director said, "No, I think I liked it better the other way." I worked in commercials and animated shows, especially commercials, where by the end of the session, the engineer would have piles of pieces of tape on the floor. And
cigarette burned down
record
from
something,
the filter.
And then,
like I said, guys, I've seen pictures of guys with the cigarette ash burning, hanging off, and he's just sweating. And
the editors, right. So they would always have to, once you finish something, you have to play it for the, let's say if it's a commercial. He's either somebody there from the advertising agency or the company, the General Mills or something, and they got to play it for them, And sometimes one of those guys from the agency or something would say, "I wasn't crazy about the way he said the," and you wouldn't believe how many times. I mean, these guys, what they're doing is trying to justify their job for even being there.
Yeah.
Because they had to have 6 people on a commercial session. They had 6 people from the advertising agency and 2 from the product. And I think sometimes each one of those people had to justify why they're there. So when the engineer would say, "Everybody okay with that? I didn't like the way you said, you got another one?" The guy said, Okay, I think it's over here on this pile. Splice it back in. I mean, it was incredible. But the engineers in those days, man, they were brilliant. They were. I mean, now you do it with the computer, right?
Yeah.
It's all digital. Can you cut that out? It's out.
And nowadays, I just got an update for my computer where the AI will smooth everything out real nice for you. And I won't have a job, but that's okay.
Well, a lot of us wouldn't have jobs, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the AI can talk for you, you know, copy any voice you want.
So in doing my research for you, I know there have been many iterations and versions of ThunderCats over the years, many of which you have been a part of.
Both of them, yeah.
And you did different voices for them. Has it been, you know, what's that process like when, you know, look, you did the quintessential ThunderCats and Lion, and then there's a newer version.
2011.
Do they ask you to, all right, you're going to do this different in any way, shape, or form, or, you know, make him younger, or, you know, something to that effect?
Good question. And I've got a good answer too. In 2011, Warner Brothers rebooted ThunderCats.
Mm-hmm.
Did a great job. And I thought it should have gone on for a long time, but it didn't. Toy sales weren't that good. But in that incarnation of the show, I played Lion-O's father, Claudius. So he's older. That's fine. I'm older than I was when you know what I'm saying? From 85 to 2011, my voice has gotten older.
Right.
So it was just my same voice, except instead of, gee, Panthro, I don't know if I can be the Lord of the Thundercats. You know, I mean, Lion-O, you've got to listen to what I tell you. You are now the Lord of the Thunder. A little gravel in there, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's already in there, so I didn't have to worry about it. Damn, I was good.
Look, there's no question about whether you were good or not. I mean,
oh, thank you.
You know, I was that kid who was also trying to imitate what they saw on TV, and I didn't have the tone that you did, so I couldn't quite, you know, pull off Lion-O and that stuff. Peter Griffin and Quagmire, I did, but yeah.
Well, let's hear it.
So, Stewie, you want to come over here and talk to Daddy?
Well, no, fat man, I don't want to deal with you.
You know,
that's really good.
I'm
not just being condescending. That is really good.
Oh, thank you. See, around here, I'm a big hit. Outside, not so much, but it's fine.
Well, you haven't had the opportunity, I don't think, yet to. Have you done any voiceover at all?
I have done just basic scratch tracks for some corporate work when I was working on. Okay. What do you have? What else are you working on nowadays?
Well, I mentioned Pokemon Horizons, which will be working on for the next 2 years. They booked me for 3 years on that.
Wow.
Well, it's not every day. So I go in maybe once a week.
Okay.
Once I go in. I live in Connecticut, an hour from the city in New York. So doing Teen Titans Go. And still doing the Skittles commercials. The Skittles commercials, this is the best gig I ever had. First of all, I've been doing it about almost 25 years. And my rule on each commercial is 6 words, and only one of them changes. Think about it. Feel the rainbow, taste the rainbow. Enlarge the rainbow, taste the rainbow. Imagine the rainbow, taste the rainbow. I go in for 10 minutes, you know, and I told them once about 20 years ago, I said, you know, it'd save us all a lot of work. Travel. Why don't you book me for 2 full days in the studio? I'll come in, we'll record every verb in the English language. And then I won't have to keep coming back in here all the time. But then I realized that's not good for me because you get paid for session. Every session you get paid.
Right.
You know, and then you get residuals. That's where you make money.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And Skittles plays everywhere in the world. And in fact, I can't. Every time my wife and I go to the movie theater, there's a Skittles commercial on there. I don't know if you had that experience, but yeah.
So, where can fans follow you on social media?
Facebook. I'm on Facebook, just under my name, Larry Kenney. It says, "Voice actor will talk for food," and that's what. Now I have, at the insistence of my daughter, Carrie, who's an actress. You may be familiar with her, Carrie Kenney Silver, Reno 911.
Oh yeah,
the tall, skinny one, Trudy Weigel.
Yes.
That's my daughter, Carrie.
Shit.
And little plug here. In September, she's coming out. She lives in Malibu, California. She's coming out here. She's booked for 4 months to record a movie. No, it's a series, I think. Series? Yes, it's a series called Four Seasons, based on the movie Four Seasons. If you ever saw it, I don't know. It's about four couples who every 4 times a year they get together.
Yes.
Anyway, they just announced it last week. She's playing Steve Carell's wife. I like to say he's playing her husband.
There you go.
It's a Tina Fey production. Her company's doing it, so Tina Fey is in it, and Carrie's in it, and so that's my plug for my daughter.
That's awesome. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying it, now I can see the resemblance. That's so interesting.
Oh, she won't like that. No, she actually looks just like her mother, who's. Yeah, Carrie's. I'm so proud of her. She's done so well. So many movies and TV shows. And her husband, Steve, is one of the top cinematographers in Hollywood.
Wow.
Well, in TV, they call it director of photography.
Oh, DP. Yes.
Oh, my wife's here. Come on.
Hi.
Over.
Oh no! I gotta wash my hair.
She hasn't washed her hair.
It's okay. I haven't washed my hair in at least 25 years. So.
Can you see?
Yes, I can.
Because he's bald.
I put turtle wax on it, shine it up.
Oh, that's good.
And we're back. So I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. It was an absolute pleasure talking to Larry, learning about his career beyond just Lino, Skittles, Count Chocula. It's just a pleasure. Such a nice guy, such a great voice. And, like I said, you see the tears well up in my eyes when he starts doing the Lino voice. Thunder. Wait, I could do this too. Never mind. All right, look. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's been fun bringing you all this stuff that I've done this week. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Check out the CBC Awards website like I've been yammering on about all week. Give us a vote. We would really appreciate it. And until next time, whenever you see me again, who knows? But look, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.